Hi everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I am back with an incredible dessert recipe, and since it's Mandarin season here in California, I'm going to be making my Mandarin Mousse cake. This cake is so good, has so much flavor packed in there. We're gonna start with a basic sponge cake that we're gonna use for a base and a center layer. Then we're gonna make a really light and fluffy Mandarin mousse dotted full of Mandarin chunks, and then we're gonna finish everything off with a jello layer. This cake has so much incredible flavors going on. It's so light and fluffy and airy, and you guys are going to love it. And I'm going to start things off today with a really basic sponge cake that we're going to use for the base and for the middle layer. So into my mixer bowl, I'm going to place in 3 large eggs, half a cup of white granulated sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we're going to whisk this for about 7 to 8 minutes on high speed until the eggs are almost white in color and really light and fluffy. And now moving on to my dry ingredients, I have half a cup of all-purpose flour and half a teaspoon of baking powder. I'm gonna mix these two together and we're going to sift them into the eggs and sugar. I'm gonna sift the flour into the egg mixture in 2 batches. And then grab a spatula and gently but thoroughly fold the dry ingredients into the batter, kind of scraping from the bottom of the bowl, making sure you get everything incorporated. Now remember that a sponge cake gets its volume from the eggs, so don't deflate the eggs. You want them to be as light and fluffy as possible. And I've lined a 9-inch springform pan with parchment paper, and I did not grease the sides. Whenever you're making a sponge cake, don't grease the sides. Transfer that cake batter into the pan. I'm gonna grab an offset spatula and spread the cake batter evenly to the edges. You want a nice even layer. And then this cake is going into my preheated oven. I've set it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The cake is going to bake for about 18 to 20 minutes until the top of the cake is a nice rich golden brown color. I'm gonna take it out and let it cool completely while we work on our mousse. And my sponge cake layer has cooled completely, so I'm going to grab a long serrated knife and split the layer in half. And to make these layers extra moist and tender, I'm going to soak them with a little bit of sweet wine. Now, if you want to make an alcohol-free version of this cake, I'm going to include a recipe for a simple sugar syrup that you can use instead of this. My sponge cake layers are all done, so I'm going to set them aside and let's get started on that Mandarin mousse. So for this recipe, I'm using an orange curd version of my easy lemon curd recipe. So I have a separate video recipe for that, and all I did was replace the lemon juice with orange juice. You could also use Mandarin juice if you could find it. So I made this curd last night, and then I let it sit in the refrigerator to thicken up nicely. I'm going to set this aside for now. I'm going to add it in later. We're going to make a stabilized whipped cream. And into my mixer bowl, I'm going to add in 2 cups of well-chilled heavy cream, along with 2 cups of confectioner's sugar. And if you want to have a sweeter mousse cake, feel free to add more confectioner's sugar at this time. Now I'm going to turn on my mixer and whisk it for 4 to 5 minutes on medium to high speed until I get stiff peaks. Next, I'll prepare my gelatin. So I have 3 tablespoons of water in my measuring cup. I'm going to add in a tablespoon of unflavored gelatin. Mix that in, and then I'm going to take this over to the microwave and heat it in 10-second intervals for about 45 to 60 seconds until that gelatin is completely dissolved. And this is really important, otherwise the mousse cake will not set. And this next step is really important. You want to take the gelatin straight out of the microwave while it's still piping hot and pour it into the whipped cream with the mixer running on medium speed. And now that my whipped cream is ready to go, I'm going to pour in my orange curd, and we're going to slowly and gently fold it together. Just grab a spatula and kind of scoop from the bottom of the bowl. You want to make sure that the whipped cream stays really light and fluffy because that's what's going to give the mousse cake volume. You also want to make sure that it gets really well combined so that it sets properly. And finally, I'm going to add in 2 cups of chopped mandarins. Today I used fresh mandarins. You can also use canned ones. Just drain them all the way and then chop them into smaller pieces. We're just going to gently fold that in. And now let's assemble the cake. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop my sponge cake layer back into that same springform pan. Just wash it, clean it, make sure it's nice and dry. And I'm going to place an acetate cake collar into the pan. Now this is not 100% necessary. I just like to add it because it's easier to take the cake out of the pan. It also makes it look really nice and pretty on the edges. And I'm going to add about half of my Mandarin mousse into the pan. And I'll place my second sponge cake layer back into the pan as well. And then add the remaining Mandarin mousse over the top. And then to garnish the top, I'm going to place Mandarin segments right on top. Just go all the way around. And this stunning Mandarin mousse cake is ready to go into the refrigerator. I'm going to let it chill for about an hour, hour and a half. That mousse needs to start setting up just slightly before we add the jello on the top. Otherwise, when the jello and the mousse mix together, it's just gonna create like this ugly mess, and you don't want that. So make sure it's nicely chilled before you add the jello. And my mousse cake is almost ready for its jello topping. I've measured out 1 cup of boiling water, and here I have 6 ounces of orange jello. So it's 1 large packet or 2 small ones. I'm gonna add that right in. And just stir this around until it's completely dissolved. And once the gelatin is dissolved, we need to cool this down. So I'm going to add some ice into this mixture. And it needs to be cold before we pour it over the mousse. And then I'm going to take my jello and then slowly and gently pour it over the Mandarin slices, over the mousse on the back of a spoon. And this Mandarin mousse cake is ready to go back into the refrigerator. I'm going to let it set overnight. I want that jello to set up really nicely, the mousse to be set, and I'll come back tomorrow to reveal the cake and to enjoy it. All right, this mousse cake has set in the refrigerator overnight, and now it's time for the big reveal. And I love this part because you actually get to see all the amazing layers in there. Undo the spring form. I mean, check that out. How gorgeous of a cake is this? And I'm gonna grab a long serrated knife, slide it underneath from one end, place the spatula underneath the other. And you wanna do this really quickly so that the cake doesn't start to fall apart. Just pick it up, place it right onto your cake stand. Perfect. And then you can carefully remove this plastic acetate. Now I buy this plastic in a bulk roll on Amazon, and then you can just cut it down to size for each cake. And it just makes this recipe extra beautiful, really special. You wanna just carefully peel it away. I'm going to include this product up on my blog if you want to purchase it. And now let's cut into this stunning cake to see what it looks like on the inside. Check out how beautiful that looks on the inside. Absolutely stunning. And that's it, guys, for my Mandarin mousse cake, and I absolutely love how it turned out. It looks so stunning. For the full recipe, just head on down into that video description box. I'm going to have a link there that'll take you over to my blog where you can print this recipe off and share it with your family and friends. Now, time to dig in and enjoy this. This looks so delicious. Can't wait to try it. Oh, these layers are just so fluffy. And I love that there's like chunks of mandarins in there. Wow, this mousse cake is just out of this world amazing. You guys are going to fall head over heels in love with this cake from the very first bite. That mousse is so light and fluffy, just melts in your mouth, and then you get chunks of mandarins, and that sponge cake has really soaked up all that dessert wine, and it's just so delicate and soft and the perfect complement to this cake. If you guys are looking for one incredible citrus flavored cake for this season, this one is it. Get that link down in the video description box below. Make this cake and enjoy it at home. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.